The other top story tonight, many arguing the Republican Party has just failed its own white supremacist standard because the very thing that we've been hearing about today is a contradiction. Let's get right into it. Republicans say they wanted to formally condemn one of their own, Congressman Steve King, for racist comments, and the House did something unusual, passing this resolution overwhelmingly that says they reject white nationalism and white supremacy. It is 2018, but yes, they also took specific action against King, stripping him of his committee assignments. What he said was, quote, white nationalist, white supremacist, Western civilization. How did that language become offensive, end quote. Racist comments, though, are not new for this member of Congress. He has been saying things like this for a long time. And while he is notable if you follow politics, people hear him, he is not powerful in any conventional sense. So why is the book getting thrown at him in that building there? Why is he taking heat for things that overlap so much with things that the president has said? Steve King has said, for example, quote, white nationalists and white supremacists shouldn't necessarily be offensive. But it was Donald Trump, who we all remember, would not, when faced with a clear opportunity, denounce an actual gathering of white nationalists and white supremacists at a march where someone was killed in Charlottesville.
I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. There's some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Very fine people. I want to bring in our guests to get into this tonight because it's important. Mark Morial, President and CEO of the National Urban League, and the Root.com's Jason Johnson. Mr. Morial.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see both of you. It's 2018, and because of the actions of a current member of Congress, the Congress felt the need to say white supremacy is bad. But that is where we are at. What does it tell you that the standard appears to be different within the Republican Party depending on how much power you have?
Well, first of all, Congressman King should not be condemned. He should be censured. And if he had any good common sense, he'd resign from the Congress. He has to go. And if Congress had the power, which I'm not certain they do, to remove him, I would say he should be removed. Congress, and I think the Republican leadership, has to go farther than what they have gone. White supremacy and white nationalism and the normalization of it over the last 2 years has to be condemned vociferously, consistently, and completely. And I'd like to see them go farther, and I think they should go farther than they've gone.
I want to play something we put together, and on this show, we don't just broadcast all Trump tweets. We don't broadcast all offense. We've done this to make a deliberate point here for your analysis, which is Trump and King. Let's take a look.
These aren't people. These are animals.
They've got calves the size of cantaloupes because they're hauling 75 pounds of marijuana across the desert.
I have had horrible rulings. I've been treated very unfairly by this judge. Now, this judge is of Mexican heritage.
Where did any other subgroup of people contribute more to civilization?
Than white people?
Than Western civilization itself.
They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists.
You cannot rebuild your civilization with somebody else's babies.
They call her Pocahontas.
We could also electrify this wire. We do that with livestock all the time.
If the Republicans' issue is condemning racism, don't you have to condemn it all?
You should, but they're not going to because they don't really care. And Ari, this is my concern about what's just happened. I said last week, I don't think he should be necessarily removed. This is how democracy works. If the people in his community think he represents their beliefs, fine. I don't think he should be in a position of power. But the problem with condemning him for racism or white supremacy or white nationalism, most of those Republicans can't even define those terms. Okay, don't condemn somebody for something else. I promise you, if you roll them out and said, what is a white nationalist and why is it a problem? They are responding to bad branding. They're not responding to bad policy. And that's why I'm not impressed by this particular action. White nationalism is the idea that this country is a white homeland, and anybody who's not a white Christian shouldn't have a key role in government, economy, or popular culture. That is the antithesis of America, and it leads to terrorism. It's a national security issue. So And when they're able to say that and be specific, then I'll believe that this sort of hue and cry actually matters.
Well, let me say this. I think we also need to understand that white nationalism is, as de Gaulle put it, it is the hate of others as your defining and animating principle, whereas patriotism is love of your country, love of your people, love of yourselves. And I think this is an important debate in 21st century America because it's really a debate as to whether the future is going to be a return to the past or whether the future is going to be a leap into the present and the future. This country is a multicultural democracy. Multicultural, multi-religious, multi-ethnic. That's the kind of democracy this is. That's what it's evolving to. And I will, and we will, fight for that kind of nation. We will fight and we will battle against those that want to turn the hands of time backwards. That's what this is. It's a fight. It's a battle. It's a fight that's principled. It's a fight that's moral. It's a fight that has a political dimension. But it is in its essence about who we want to be as an American nation in the 21st century. That's what it is.
The President of the United States is also a white nationalist. He has made it clear that he's a white nationalist. And you can make arguments about him being a racist. I don't think those things, being a racist is not a disqualifier of being president, but being a white nationalist makes you a danger to our national security. The Republican Party will not condemn President Trump because they want to be associated with his power. Because many Republicans and even some Democrats are in favor of his white nationalist policies. They just don't like how he says his white nationalist policies. And that's the problem that we have in this country. It's not just an issue of demographic change. It's also an issue of actual violence. When we have police departments that have been infested with white nationalists, when we have military places that have been infested with white nationalists, why are we seeing swastikas painted in parts of Baghdad? That wasn't from them locally. That's because you have white nationalists joining our military and engaging that kind of behavior abroad. This is something that we have to tackle, and just censoring someone is not enough.
I really appreciate you both coming in for this. There was so much going on in this town tonight, but we did not want to neglect this story and two important voices.
And I'll be before the Senate Judiciary Committee tomorrow on the Barr nomination. So
you know, they call that a pivot in the news, although I suspect you'll be discussing some overlapping issues, including civil rights. I know
civil rights enforcement, criminal justice.
And I know Senator Booker was questioning some of that today, so we'll be watching your testimony.
Thank you.
Thanks to both of you. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.